This video aims to assess and teach the skill of soccer juggling. Although soccer players tend not to juggle the ball in a game, soccer juggling can be seen as an effective way of increasing a player's ball control ability, specifically when receiving an airborne pass, thus improving the player's all-important first touch. Soccer juggling can be classified as a gross and open motor skill, as it requires the athlete to use large musculature and to perform according to the actions of the skill, which in this case is the movement and flight of the soccer ball. A continuous skill classification can also be applied to this skill, as the juggling motion has an inconsistent beginning and end point. The learner has a long and experienced background in hockey goalkeeping. Certain attributes that Elliot has attained through goalkeeping can be seen to enhance the learning process through positive transfer, such as good reflexes and spatial awareness, good foot-eye coordination, natural ability to recognise the centre of the ball and make contact with it, an ability to recognise the trajectory of the ball, and proficient balance and agility. Conversely, certain goalkeeping traits can be seen as debilitating, such as the habit of kicking the ball away from the body in the area and not controlling it, and also the habit of using hands to control the ball above the waist instead of chest, shoulders, and head that are used in soccer juggling. The primary focus of this training program was to address each fundamental aspect of soccer juggling in order to gain the essential skills needed to juggle the ball proficiently. After watching an expert demonstration of the skill of soccer juggling, the participant undertook a pre-test. The aim of the pre-test was to assess the skill level of the learner prior to receiving any training. The pre-test involved calculating both qualitative and quantitative measures of soccer juggling, which were the number of times the ball was touched on each foot and any other body part, and also the number of times the participant was successfully able to juggle the ball without the ball hitting the ground. Do one more. Each step began with an explanation of the skill, followed by a demonstration and brief instruction of the key points. The training program's initial focus was on the ability to master the discrete and closed motor skills of soccer juggling, with the aim to progress the participant from their current cognitive stage of learning to a more advanced associative or optimal autonomous stage of learning. Focusing on the one distinct movement allowed the participant to gain a foundation of the skill in which they could then progress to the more complicated open serial and open continuous skills of soccer juggling. The training program was conducted over a period of 5 weeks, consisting of 2 match practice training sessions per week, one 1-hour session and one 30-minute session. The program consisted of both block and random practice. Although shorter and more distributed training sessions would have been optimal, 2 match practice sessions were chosen due to its practicality and the availability of recording equipment. Using the same pre-test analysis, the participant completed a retention test after a week of no training following the 5-week training program. This 5-day layoff period, from the last training session to the testing, allowed for the temporary effects of the training program to dissipate. This delay is crucial as it allows for an accurate measure of relatively permanent learning that has occurred during the practice. Once the retention test was completed, we were then able to accurately assess the learnt ability of the subject. The retention test showed a large improvement in the participant's quantitative measures, with an almost 3-fold improvement in the average number of times Elliot was able to juggle the ball without it touching the ground. The qualitative measures, however, remained fairly similar, with a strong reliance on the participant's favoured foot evident during both the pre- and retention test. Although Elliot favoured his dominant foot in both tests, the retention test did indicate an increase in ability to incorporate other parts of the body, specifically his thigh, to juggle the ball, an aspect that was absent in his pre-test, with Elliot only using his foot to juggle the ball. With these measures in mind, the evidence indicated that significant learning occurred in both the qualitative and quantitative measures of the skill. Although the results showed a marked increase in Elliot's performance, the training program did have a number of flaws that became clearly evident once training began. The generalised nature of the training program meant the program needed to be tailored drastically in order to meet the individual's learnability as training progressed. As a teacher, I felt the training program's rudimentary nature caused the participant to become disinterested at times and required fast-tracking to more challenging tasks in order to maintain the subject's level of arousal, especially when considering the mass practice schedule of the training program. Another key aspect that was missing from the training program was the implementation of practice variability, as it was not until the last week of practice when we introduced random practice that any type of higher contextual interference was utilised in the program. In retrospect, I feel the training program would have benefited from an increase in inter-trial variability, a more distributed practice, an increase in practice variability, and an individualised program that focused on the participant's ability rather than the generalised approach that the current program adhered to.
Throughout the training program, I felt as though the skill I was attempting to learn was too simple for the length of the training program and sessions. While 2 sessions per week was acceptable, too often the training sessions did not last for the intended amount of time as a result of the easiness of the drills and the short amount of practice needed to become good at it. There also seemed to be a lack of drills overall. Furthermore, I felt as though standing in the same spot almost all the time became slightly boring. Participating in a drill that requires you to stand still or stand in a particular area for the entire duration became dull, and I would have preferred something a bit more challenging considering how quickly I was becoming competent at the set drills. Regarding the drill themselves, while they were productive, they were not overly engaging, and they lacked a sufficient amount of inter-trial variability, as all I needed was a ball and a vacant piece of grass. Reflecting upon the few variables, I felt that using the same ball throughout the entire program was beneficial to me, but the varying condition of the surface sometimes made it difficult for me to practice properly. The rugged, dry and bumpy grass areas made it challenging to perform the skill, whereas the clean and flat surfaces were the easiest to train on. Throughout the training program, I felt that I did not receive a lot of feedback and instead was required to identify where my training and skill was failing and succeeding. Due to my inexperience with the skill, regardless of whether I was able to achieve the criteria of the drill, I was still unsure of whether I was performing it properly or not. On the other hand, on the occasions that I did receive feedback, I did feel more confident and competent as a result. Additionally, I also found that having the drill demonstrated to me before I attempted it was more beneficial due to how it worked well with my preferred style of learning and made it easier for me to understand the task. Overall, although the drills were not overly time-consuming or creative, they did achieve their purpose, and I do feel competent in juggling a soccer ball.